Welcome to the Women in Business radio show with Sian Murphy, connecting women in business around the globe.
Hello and welcome into the Women in Business radio show studio. I'm Sian Murphy. My co-host today is
Jemma Fairclough Haynes. Hello.
The lovely Jemma. We've got Jemma back in the studio again, which is always such a pleasure. It's always great fun. And who else have we got in the studio with us today? We have got Lorraine Crookes, who is a sexual empowerment liberator and founder of Orgasmic Life. Welcome into the studio, Lorraine. We are going to be talking about how sexual energy affects your business and how Lorraine has managed to make a switch from really something around intimacy that is very often going on in people's homes and their intimate lives, and actually adapted it, adapted is probably the wrong word, how it is now being applied. I'm going to get a lot of words wrong here, right? Okay, I'm telling you now, I keep getting it wrong. I keep talking about sex. It's not sex, it's something else. So we don't want an hour full of corrections, but I'm just warning you now. But how that switch from something which is really quite intimate and private and personal, maybe just with ourselves, or it may be about our relationships, our intimate relationships with other people, to actually how that can be applied and affect your business, and how by looking at that you can effect a really sort of quite powerful change in the results that you're getting in your business. Did I get all of those words right?
Perfect.
See, this is what happens when you write nothing down. Okay, also in the studio we have got Amanda Anwar with us, who is one half of Amanda and Kathy Conscious Living Coaches. Kathy is unfortunately not very well and she's not in the studio with us today. So Amanda will be maybe dipping in and out if there's something that's sort of relevant. We will see, because we never really know which way the conversation is going to go. So Lorraine is also an exhibitor at the Women in Business Big Show. Jemma is a speaker at the Women in Business Big Show.
I'm exhibiting as well.
And exhibiting, yes. Exhibiting, speaking.
I'll be there all day.
One day I'm going to write all of this down so you can hear and see both of them at the Women in Business Big Show.
Me.
And, oh God, so, hello. See, I knew I'd get it wrong. Amanda and Kathy are also speaking at the Women in Business Big Show. So Amanda is talking about how change your story. Amanda and Kathy are talking about change your story to change your business. Jemma is talking about
the first steps to growing a support team.
There we go.
You've probably got some other words, but that's
I'm sure
it,
that
yeah.
I'm sure by the time we've all finished with it, there'll be lots of different words in there. Let's tell you a little bit about the event itself. So it's the Women in Business Big Show for 2023. It is at Longfield, which is near Ebbsfleet in Kent. So it's about 5 minutes from Bluewater, if you know where that is. 15 minutes from St Pancras. You can find out more information on the womeninbusinessbigshow.com. That's the website. It's free entry for visitors, and you can just turn up on the day. But if you pre-register, you get to put your business card on our business card table or wall, and you get entered into a free draw to win one of 3 stands for the 2024 event. Okay, how can you listen to the show? So if you're listening to it now, you probably worked out how you can listen to it live. But you may be listening through a couple of ways. So you may be listening on one of our FM studios, which is 100.2 FM, or you're listening to us here on Channel Radio. If you want to listen afterwards, you want to listen to all of the previous episodes, you can catch us on Spotify, Audible, Apple and Google Podcasts, and about 150 other sort of places. We're also on Alexa. If you ask Alexa to listen to the Women in Business radio show, we're everywhere. What's the word? Omnipotent. Was it omnipotent?
I'd say omnipotent, but it could be either.
You can't get away from us. You cannot escape.
I've got a question.
Go on.
How do people become a guest on the show?
That's an excellent question, isn't it? Okay, so they can approach either me or one of the co-hosts directly, or if you go on to the womeninbusinessradioshow.com website, there is a form there that says apply to be a guest. So some people I invite on, other people apply to be a guest. I personally speak to every single person that comes on, and we ask people to subscribe to our Substack monthly monthly. It's not a huge amount of money. We're talking about sort of £6 a month here. That also gets you into the brand new, launching this month on the 12th of July. That is the right month, isn't it?
Yeah.
12th of July, the international networking that we've set up for that. So if you subscribe to the show, part of that subscription goes towards you joining in with the networking, which is at 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Which means it's suitable for our guests. People who listen in the States can also join. So it's quite a good time sort of globally for people to be joining in, and that will be on Zoom. So we're having a really slow, soft launch on it because we want to see how it works first. So we just want a few people on there just to sort of get all of the technology sorted out. So yes, that's that. Thank you for asking that. So if you know anybody who wants to come on, they're more than welcome to go to the website and apply. We actually do really well for guest applications. We don't do an awful lot. We don't do any marketing actually. People just seem to find us, which is brilliant.
It's good. I just thought someone might be listening, and thinking, I wonder how I could go on.
I know. Do you know, one day I'm going to write all of this down and we'll have like a show that's got like everything, like how you can listen, what's going on, all of that sort of thing. But that day hasn't arrived yet. It's been quite a few years. It's never happened yet. The one time I did actually write everything out, it all went just horribly wrong.
Oh, yeah.
To be honest.
Maybe don't do that then.
No, I don't know. It just didn't. It just didn't seem to flow.
Well, you just have to listen to a few shows so that you get all of the information. To keep you in suspense.
We don't want to make it easy for people, do we? So, let's dive in. So, the basic topic is how sexual energy affects your business. But first of all, what I'd like to do, Lorraine, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are and how you made that. Well, I'm not sure that it's a flip because I don't think you've left one thing behind. I don't think you've left behind working with individuals on their intimacy and their sexual energy to go, okay, well, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm over here just working with businesses and doing workshops. But how did you get to be doing what you were doing initially with intimacy, and then starting to apply it to help people with their business? Because it's not the sort of thing that immediately springs to mind. That,
no, 100%. Is it? And I think what it was I was working with so many individuals and seeing some of the transitions that they were making around intimacy and some of the struggles they were having. So struggles around boundaries, consent, relationships, communication, enjoying life, and actually things that we wanted in our own life, but also started to realise that people wanted those in their business as well. There was a lot of overlap. You know, boundaries is a big thing. Communication is definitely a big thing. So they were starting to see some overlap. But also in the sessions, realising that people that were resolving some of the issues they had around intimacy and pleasure, actually the ripple effect when they'd resolved those was bigger than just managing that space in their life, that actually everything was changing. They were having better relationships with their children, they were having better relationships in their business, they were attracting more clients, and it was that whole kind of unlocking of pleasure and intimacy was actually the ripple effect across the whole life. And for me it was then looking at actually what I'm currently doing with the people I'm working with is reactive in that then they're stuck, they're in trauma, they're struggling with life, they're struggling with intimacy and pleasure and, you know, and sex and relationships. But actually the knock-on effect was so vast, and what I wanted to do was be more proactive and give people the skills so they didn't have to wait to be stuck and actually use some of those tools both in their personal life and in their business. Because, I mean, really it's about we want passion, purpose and productivity in both areas of our lives. You know, those things we want in both sides. We want healthy relationships in all aspects. We want to be in flow in all aspects.
So just to give us a sort of sense of who you work with and what aspects you help. Looking at we'll call it the personal intimacy side of things, what sort of symptoms, problems, what sort of feelings would people be dealing with that would bring them to your door?
Okay, so a lot of the one-to-one clients that I've been attracting over the last 5 years are people that may have been struggling with menopause, erectile dysfunction, broken relationships. They might have been transitioning between genders. People that are struggling with, even after childbirth, women connecting back to their body, loss of confidence. Broken relationships is quite a key one, because it's like losing that confidence in who you are, that faith in your ability to connect to another human being, and just feeling lost in who they are and losing that self-awareness and self-connection. So people kind of come with a label of, I've got this problem, but actually a lot of the times it's normally something else anyway. But it's just unwrapping that and helping people to reconnect to their body. So a lot of work that I do is helping people reconnect to their physical body, their energetic body, and just come home to who they are and reset themselves so they can go back out and connect with the world, whether that's on an intimate level with another human being or just in life in general.
So the sorts of, we'll call it symptoms that they might be presenting with, because I think when we see your business cards and that sort of thing, it's very much, to my mind, this is going to help with my sexual relationships with, so it could be in impotence, it could be a lack of sex life, it could be being, what's the word for non-orgasmic? Is that it? Non-orgasmic? Yeah. So it could be that your sex life isn't satisfying. And the knock-on effect of those may well have come from some body issues, lack of confidence, all sorts of things, broken relationships, stuff happen, trauma, which is leading to those, but which is also leading to other things that we might not have associated, that we might not have joined those dots up.
Yes. So although people come with all of those labels and tags that we all like, a lot of the work that I do is actually around things like communication. People think they've got difficult relationships, they're struggling with intimacy and pleasure, but quite often a lot of us haven't even had that conversation in the first place of what we actually would like to receive, how we want to show up, things that we'd like to connect with. So sometimes it's just about giving some skills and giving people permission to be a sexual human being, and to connect to intimacy and pleasure, and to be able to use those skills. It's often not what people come with, which is the underlying issue, which I'm sure is the same
for most
the same in most coaching businesses. It's like what's present. After COVID, I had a lot of men connect with me and come forward because they'd got erectile dysfunction. That was about their loss of masculinity and their loss of role during COVID. They weren't broken. They thought they were broken. They'd got a physical health condition. They hadn't. Mindfulness and breath work resolved a lot of that, because actually it was about losing their status and losing their identity during a time. So often there's lots of other things. I'm not teaching people how to be intimate with another human being. I'm teaching them how to connect themselves so that they're more connected to who they are, so they can then stand in their own power and connect to someone else or life.
Were you going to say something, Jemma?
No, I'm glad that you said mindfulness. Well, I am glad, but yeah, I was thinking, well, how do you do that? And then you mentioned mindfulness and breath, mindfulness and breath techniques. Breath work. So, but what other things do you do to help people to connect?
So lots of somatic body work. So physically connecting to our body. A lot of us are disconnected from our physical self. We don't connect to that. We think we do, but we don't. Mindfulness is a huge one. Definitely the breath work, sound and movement. Intimacy is very much about sound, movement, and breath. And most of us do breathing. Possibly in intimacy. Most of us hold our breath. We probably don't make a lot of sound because that's not what we were taught to do. We've got a lot of cultural baggage that we carry around intimacy and pleasure. And movement, that kind of freedom of expression and stuff. So even some of those skills can help somebody with any, not just, erectile dysfunction, but, menopause or just generally we don't have that education. We were taught a sex education. We weren't taught about intimacy and pleasure.
It's more biological education, isn't it?
This goes here, and don't put that there.
Yeah, A and B makes C. Yeah. It's fear-faced, and I know that they were fear facts because, I worked in education and I taught that curriculum. So I know that that's not what we get. So then we're undoing the first few bad experiences that we may have had, and from then we're just kind of navigating, trying to get it right. Somewhere along the line,
I suppose,
with no one giving us permission to actually have a conversation about it.
In UK schools, it's very much of whatever you do, don't do this, isn't it? It's not,
yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes I can feel sorry for the teachers, because very often they're not experts in that field. They're the biology teacher. What are you supposed to do if you've now been asked to deliver this curriculum? But anyway, we won't. We
go off sick.
Yeah, no.
The teachers do.
We won't go too far down that road. So one of the things, because we do send out a little questionnaire, just to get sort of an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. One of the things that we asked is, what do you do to relax? And this has just come up, so I'm just sort of mentioning it now. And what you said was you breathe, move, and make a sound. And I don't think I've heard those three things together as a go and do this.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if there's anything to expand on that. I just think that's a really cool trio of a little sort of triumvirate of things to do together. Actually.
And that's very much come through my Tantra training. So a lot of the work that I've done to be doing the job that I do now is very much Tantra energy. It's about connecting to our breath in lots of different ways.
Can you explain what Tantra energy is?
Okay, so Tantra's got a lot of misconceptions, but Tantra energy is the weaving together of. It's the bringing together of breath and sound and movement and very much aligned with sexual energy. But a lot of us don't tend to do all of those three things in a really healthy way. So we don't breathe properly. We're breathing because we're all sitting here now, but we don't consciously breathe, which is all the stuff that Amanda was talks about. We don't consciously breathe. We forget about movement, dancing, singing, all of that stuff. Even on a really basic level, brings in our happy hormones. It revitalises us, and it gives us permission to play. Breath, sound and movement gives permission to play, which as adults we quite often forget that we still are entitled to have some playtime.
And thinking about it now, because I've never seen those three things together, but thinking about it now, if we go out and we go to a class, if you like, or we go to an activity, you tend to do, if you're dancing, you get yourself out of breath. So you are breathing to some extent, I suppose, possibly not as you mean. And you are moving, but you're not making a sound. I don't think I've seen anybody, let's say in a Zumba class, for instance, actually shouting or singing at the top of their lungs or making any noise at all, apart from
they're just trying
grunting.
to stay alive.
Yes.
Sean. I mean,
I get this.
trying not to collapse.
I get that we're in survival mode. I do get that. Neither have I ever gone out walking and talked to myself or made a noise or done anything. I normally put some headphones on and off I trot. So to have those three things together, I think is a really sort of powerful thing. It's the sort of thing we can do. It could be a bit difficult in the office. We could look a little bit mad, wandering around Dragon co-working, couldn't we? So
that's exactly why we should be doing it, because the perception of what is right and wrong. Why shouldn't you be talking to yourself in nature? I do that all the time, walk barefoot, chatting away to myself. We're so controlled and conditioned.
It's not that I thought I couldn't. It's just that it's never occurred to me this is that why would I want to? So okay,
but that's also the energy that we have in intimacy and pleasure. We don't have the conversation, we don't make the sound, we don't open our voice up to ask for what we want and what we don't want, and that echoes then through life. Once we've gained some of these skills in intimacy and pleasure, there's a knock-on effect in how we then show up. That's the boundaries and the consent. If we can ask what we want, and even skills like how do we say to someone that we don't want what we're getting, and actually, thank you, that's great, but what would make that even better is a really good term to use in business. So it'd be like, that's really great. However, if you wouldn't mind, some of these skills do overlap. But business is an intimate relationship. It is an intimate relationship.
It's sort of obvious when you say it now, and in fact business is probably one of the most intimate relationships that we have. I think it's more intimate than an employer-employee relationship, actually, because you can't separate yourself from your business. So when you're sat with another business owner, it could be another director, you're actually having it is what should be a really intimate, detailed conversation, isn't it?
And that's the bit I was finding. I was doing the one-to-one work. Those people that I was working with that were real kind of business entrepreneurs, leaders, the knock-on effect in their confidence, that little bit more of a sassy walk, a bit more confident in their communication, really starting to be clear about their boundaries, and really confident in their yeses and their nos, and how they want you to show up.
Because boundaries in business, boundaries are something I prattle on about quite a lot, because I think sometimes, as I don't like to say as businesswomen, I can only come at it from my point of view at the moment of being a businesswoman. So one of the things that I didn't do at the outset and really should have done was set some very, very clear boundaries about how you were going to work with me and how you were going to work with my business, and what was okay and what wasn't. And so I think becoming aware of those and being really comfortable going no is critical to how our business moves forward.
And often we can do it in one area of our life and not the other. Yeah. And actually what I'm trying to promote is that if you do it in both, how much better would life be? Like on a personal and a professional level. If we can hold those boundaries of a yeses and a nos in every area, and we can, all of those skills that we've just talked about, if we can have them in both areas of our life, we're going to show up so much better, be happier, be healthier, because we're in control in two very vulnerable and powerful places in our life.
Because thinking about it now, and I'm sure I'm going to say the wrong word here, but as an individual, as a person, I'm a whole. I hate the word holistic, but I'm a complete being, aren't I? I have both the physical and mental, and everything there is complete. And my sexual energy is part of my business, my life, and everything I do. The whole thing sort of comes together as a package. That wasn't a pun, by the way.
No, that's.
But it does, and you can't strip one out from the other, can you? Even to what I may put on to go and talk, what I wear, how I feel about what I'm putting on and how I wear. Does it feel tight? Does my bum look big in this? All of that sort of is the same thing, isn't it?
100%. We are sexual energy. How we dress, how we connect with the world, how we connect with nature, relationships. How we have conversations. Sexual energy isn't really a thing. That's what we are, human beings.
Okay.
So how can it not impact our business if it is us and we are our business? It's one of the same thing.
Yes, right. Okay, so I'm just thinking where to go now, because I'm at a little bit of an advantage, or would it be a disadvantage? Because I have actually seen you speak, and one of the things that really struck me is how what you were talking about was not what I was expecting you to talk about. And when I first saw you speak, it struck me that actually this was really relevant for people's businesses, but I don't think you'd actually mentioned businesses at that point. But it did occur to me that this was quite a big thing. Also, things that we keep hearing about, imposter syndrome. I think that, and this has just occurred to me, so I'm feeling quite brilliant now, but I think this is potentially part of the solution mix to things like imposter syndrome as well. So imposter syndrome, if you've not come across it before, is where you get the feeling that you're doing something that you're not actually probably qualified or able to do, and that at some point, whenever that is, somebody's going to realise that you're a complete and utter fake and that you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that this is also part of the mix to help with that.
What do you think then?
I was just hanging on the word, don't fake it.
Yeah.
Never fake it.
Yeah. Just go, no, sorry, Dumpling, don't do that. Slap her on the...
Stop pretending.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's not working. Okay, no, that's a slightly different thing. But I hadn't really... what I was expecting you to say was it wasn't necessarily what we got, and that I always like it when stuff like that happens, when I'm sort of surprised out of I know what this is going to be about, and it wasn't, and I could see a totally different angle. I then saw you speak again where you were talking about how we very often run our businesses using our heads and our thoughts, and yet we have our hearts. And there was another bit further down, sort of in our, I suppose, our pelvic region.
Yeah, hara is the
heart. Right,
I couldn't. Down.
Right, okay. So, can you talk a little bit about what those are, and perhaps where we should be running our businesses from, rather than out of our heads?
Yeah. So I think most of us would like to, hopefully think that we work on our business from our head. It's a very logical process, and you know, we need to be in our head to run it. But actually, my argument is actually if we run it from our heart, which is a much stronger energy, and we feel our business rather than think about it, we're probably going to give it a lot more connection and a lot more scope to be really connected to the people we're working with. The Hara energy, which is, I think, is the one that you were saying was kind of not heard of, is for those in the chakra world, the sort of kind of sacral energy. And actually, when we think about what our genital area is, the kind of waist down, it's about creating new life, manifesting. It's our power place. It's where we give and receive, and I think we all want that in the business. You know, it's about our space where we can create new life, build our business, but a lot of us are disconnected from that energy. We work our business from the head energy when we should be really working from the heart and the Hara energy, because that's the more powerful space to be working from, and actually isn't based on a set of assumptions that have gone before. Thoughts are only kind of made up of things that we've experienced. It's very difficult unless we trust.
So if we're running our businesses from our heads, we have all of the subconscious thoughts, all of the limiting beliefs, all of the crap we've picked up from everybody else, all of our trying to be logic, all of our books we might have read, other things that we have accepted, stories we tell ourselves, a lot of which are just complete and utter rubbish. And what we're trying to do is make some logic out of that and apply it to how we should be running our business.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas if you start to tap into the energy and what's going on around your heart and your Hara energy, you're starting to work more from perhaps gut instinct
100%.
And intuition.
Yes. And the heart energy is a really powerful one. If you make a decision from your heart, even if it doesn't go right, it won't be wrong, because you made it from the right space.
Yeah.
You know, you made it with all the best intentions, and if it doesn't pan out, then actually it doesn't matter.
You don't have the overthinking either.
No, you haven't got a right and wrong and justify it. And you know, most of our decisions in our life, we can justify either way, you know, whether we do it or don't do it, and we can make very, very good arguments for both sides. If you fall into your heart and you drop down to your heart energy, whatever you're feeling into, whatever happens, will be the right thing to happen. That's about trusting your heart and your gut instinct, which is the energy of the energy we just talked about from the waist down, which is also the space I'm working with that most people are disconnected from. So how are we going to have that manifesting, powerful, giving and receiving, creation space if actually we're not connecting to that energy whatsoever?
And I think the problem is it all sounds a bit mad, doesn't it? But it isn't. But if you've never been introduced to anything along those lines, it can be a bit, oh, this is woo-woo. This isn't a business, is it? You know, we want to have a book on an MBA, and we want to sit there with a spreadsheet and a formula and do that and sort of approach business in that way, because we can sort of understand it, can't we? We can apply numbers to it and a formula and go, okay, this is going to work. When you go into businesses and you do workshops in businesses, so if I say to you, Lorraine, come and talk to me, and we're going to talk about, you know, working from my heart and my Hara, I'm already there, aren't I? I've sort of got some idea of what I'm going to get. When you go in and somebody has brought you in to talk to a team of people, they haven't already bought into this, have they?
No.
How do you approach that so that I can just see sort of people like giggling into their hands or just going, oh, okay, well, this is all woo-woo, isn't it? You know, this is all, you know, stuff. How do you approach that to sort of get people to at least just explore and accept enough to just take some of it on board, just listen?
Opening the conversation, really. I think that the formula that you just referred to, we're not saying that doesn't work, but there's a difference to whether you want your business to be a process or an experience. The same as intimacy. Is it a process or is it an experience? A lot of us get into habits of processes in life.
Well, they're easy to
include in intimacy, because it's just that's the logic, and that's how we live our life. And it's about how we can move the business forward by it becoming an experience for both the person running it and the people that are involved, the people that are buying into the service. And a lot of that is showing people how that there is a link. And we're not saying it's a direct link, that if you're in a place of pleasure and intimacy and you get a kiss on the door as you go out in the morning and you enjoy connecting with people and you're all of those beautiful things of hugs and cuddles and intimate occasion, that improves your quality of life. That improves your vitality. Intimacy and pleasure, in theory, improve your energy. They're a healthy part of our living. They're actually a basic human need. So that is about giving us the best skill set to then run our business, to have those things put into our lives, which then enable us to show up better at work.
I've just got this vision of you in front of all of these people with like crossed arms, sort of clear.
They normally start with crossed arms or leave.
This has got nothing to do with me.
No. So have you had that there where people have just left?
Yeah, people find it a difficult subject, but that's the point, isn't it? Business is actually a difficult subject, but intimacy, when you're broaching it, but actually when people can see that actually there's a part of their life that they could improve, and the problem I have is obviously it's a taboo subject. No one actually wants to talk about it. So when you're going into a business environment and talking about a taboo subject, you pretty much set yourself up with a hard audience. But
Sorry.
It's kind of like a difficult...
Sorry.
It's a difficult one to overcome in the sense of, you're matching two very different worlds.
So now we've got the giggles, okay, how do you, is there a sort of a general approach that you take? Is it with humour? I mean, because really, I think what you're doing, I suppose any workshop, any talk is a performance, isn't it?
Yes.
So do you approach it with humour or do you, or is it a case of you look at what's going on in front of you, so you're stood there and you're looking at the people that you've got and perhaps a little bit of body language and going, right, well, okay, they're not looking very open here. How are we going to get this going?
There's two sides to this. There's the side where I've worked with clients that have come to me with sexual energy challenges, whether that's erectile dysfunction, that are at the end of their tether, and that impacts on their family, their life, their job, everything. The things that when people are struggling with their sexual energy, the knock-on effect and the ripple effect in the rest of their life is huge.
But I think there's a difference when they've come to you, where they know they have this issue, and so they've come to you knowing that your business is called Orgasmic Life. I think that's very different to standing in front of a group of business people where you've been taken in to do a workshop.
And I agree, but the point I was going to make was actually in that audience will be those people. And they won't know where, they won't even, most people don't even know it exists. It's like, oh, what's that when I talk about what I do? So also, yes, there's the humour. It is a topic we don't talk about. I do bring in humour because it is an area that we all struggle generally to talk about. And it's about showing the links that if we can improve that area of our life by having a conversation about it, by giving ourselves permission to improve it, how that can improve not only our life, outside of work, but the knock-on effect it can have in how we show up in our business. And as you said, whether that's how we dress, how we carry ourselves, the confidence to have conversations that we wouldn't normally have, that shows transferable skills. So it's between the reality of actually how much something that no one talks about can impact on our life to how it can improve our life and the transition between the two.
I mean, I imagine it, as you say, transition between the two, I imagine it goes both ways. If you've had a bad day at work, 100%. Then when you go home, you're not going to feel you might not feel very intimate. Or if you've had a horrible day at home, when you go to work, or, you might not feel like you want to have those relationships with your colleagues and clients and service users, etc.
100%. But most people don't have that conversation. It's a bit of a silent thing. No one kind of says, actually, that's not, and then things get left and left and left.
So when businesses approach you, so say it's to run a workshop, so there's a team of people and they want a workshop. What are the symptoms let's assume that the team leader or the business owner actually doesn't have such an intimate relationship with the individuals that they're working with, that they think, oh, actually there could be a sexual energy thing here going on. What symptoms would they be dealing with, would they be seeing in their business that would finally lead them to you?
I would say time off health-wise, people struggling with relationships at home, maybe some, teams that are struggling to hold down the relationships, are struggling to going home, that partners don't understand the stresses of the jobs. So just where there's some maybe cracks that are starting to appear, and generally, maybe the well-being. Sexual energy is a well-being issue. It's a mental health issue as much as anything else. It is a subject we don't talk about. So what happens with that? It's something we're carrying around. We're not dealing with. We're not bringing to the forefront of conversation. So it is the taboo subject that needs to have a conversation about. And what I've found in groups that I have worked with, whether it's men's mental health groups, whether it's going into small businesses, it's actually once the conversation has had, people come forward and admit that they may have, problems at home, but no one's having that conversation. We hide it under something else.
I think one of the things that struck me when I first saw you speak was that how, I'm not going to say, I thought we were all going to be giggling in the corner, but I was quite struck by how it sort of applied to everybody and not just somebody who might be having an issue with their sex life, that it was really sort of quite across the board, to be honest. And I couldn't see that there would be anybody who wouldn't have some little issue around this. There wouldn't be just something there that they might need to tweak, even if it wasn't a major issue with a significant trauma.
Yeah, so I've worked with people that have been through significant abuse, and that holds them back in life. So working through that, but also people that find it very difficult to talk to their partners, and giving them tools to have a conversation, and how that then shows up. Because actually once they've had the conversation and the relationships change, then life changes, because there's a knock-on effect. And my niche market is humans. I work with, men, women, transgender, variety of ages, cultures. There's all sorts of hurdles for us to overcome, and actually when we unlock them and resolve them around sexual energy, the liberation in every other area of our life, including business, is amazing.
One of the things I've heard you say is about how, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, is about how far our heart energy goes out from beyond our body. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and potentially why we need to be aware of that and what the impact of that is?
So the Heart Math Institute's done a lot of research on the energy of...
I've heard of them.
Have you?
I have.
So they've done a lot of studies on the kind of the energy and the power, and the significance in difference between our brain energy and our heart energy. And the heart energy radiates 6 times outside of our physical body. It's 5,000 times more powerful than our brain, and yet probably the one thing, a lot to do with culture, that we kind of try and shut off, lock down, ignore, but actually it vibrates at such a higher rate than our mind and our gut instinct, and yet we don't feel into life, we think about life, and that's the process and the experience thing again. If we are thinking about life, we are living in a process. If we experience life, then we're feeling it. We're trusting that heart energy, which is a really, really hard thing to do. To trust your heart is a really hard thing to do, because ego and logic just get in the way.
Is your heart energy or your heart instinct different to your gut instinct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a way that you can explain how we could distinguish between the two? So if I'm stood here with somebody, so say I'm stood there and it's part of my business, I'm making a decision about whether to take somebody on as a client or as a business partner or collaborator, my head could be weighing up, well, they've done this before, they've got that experience, or they can do this or that or the other, and this is how much money they want, or whatever it is. What my gut might be doing a little bit of a rumba, going, I'm not sure this person's very nice, or this person, I may know that they're lying, or I may know so there's something going on there that isn't absolutely 100% being honest. What would my heart doing with that?
So for any situation like that, I would always say to someone, literally stop, pause in a moment, put your hand on your heart and say, how does this feel? How does this feel? Does it feel right?
So you're asking a question.
Yeah. Okay. How does it feel in your body?
Yeah.
Because,
okay.
And if you're really tuned into your body and you are thinking about something and you change the energy to your heart energy and it's like, how does this feel? You'll notice a bit of a difference when you're thinking about it to when you're feeling it. There'll be a shift. You'll just notice, it might be ever so slight, but you'll notice that shift in your physical body between a thought and a feeling. They're two different things.
Because I would have said that was gut instinct. So then what's the difference between gut instinct?
They're very close. The gut instinct's a bit more on the edge. Like that gut instinct, the heart radiates stronger. You need all three. We can't be completely out of our head. I mean, we wouldn't exist as human beings. So it's aligning all three together. So when I'm making a decision, it was like, okay, what do I think about this? The logic head always kicks in because that's our survival mode. And then it's like, okay, so this is my decision. How does that now feel? And then it's just checking in with the gut instinct, because that's the instinct that's all about the manifesting and seeing it through as a thing. So yes, they are very close. But that's my point, is that most of us are living in our head and not in our heart and hara. And the hara is completely oblivious. People don't even tune into that gut instinct and that energy from the waist down. But it's really about tapping into trusting ourselves and a feeling as opposed to a thought. And a thought is not a real thing. It's a man-made creation. It doesn't even exist. A feeling is something different.
So, going back a little bit, you mentioned about the hara and very briefly about receiving. Mm-hmm. So, is it possible to just expand on that a little bit? I think we can see how we're ready to receive, perhaps. No, actually, you tell me.
I don't.
Right, okay.
Give me the question again.
You said where the hara down
yes, in waist down.
The waist down bit is about being able to receive. Mm-hmm. So can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So if we're talking about our male and female anatomy, this is the space where we give and receive into that space. It's our vulnerability. And actually, if we're not honouring that in an appropriate way, if we're not respectful in how we manage that space, if we're not respectful in how we serve our own body in that energy, in that sexual energy, which is what we're talking about, then it's very difficult for that to show up in other areas of life for giving and receiving. It can become blocked.
So extrapolating it on to giving and receiving. In business, we need to be prepared, and this is going to sound a bit mad because people think, well, of course I'm prepared to receive money, but you need to be ready to receive money, to receive payment, don't you? You need to be ready to receive perhaps different points of view. You might need to be ready to receive complaints or tax bills, or all sorts of things that are going to be coming towards you. Mm-hmm. Are those, so is being ready to receive and receive in the right way in that bit, sort of in the hara, the bit below our waist, is that related to being able to receive other things in your business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we are talking the woo-woo energetic stuff here, but again, because it's about...
Well, I'll tell you what, we all live the woo-woo energetic stuff, don't we? So
and it's the real stuff. So it's that, again, it's that manifesting energy. So it's the power of giving and receiving. If we've got blocks in how we manage that, and just because we're male or female, it's still giving and receiving. It doesn't matter what bits who's got what. It's still giving and receiving, however that works. But actually, if we've got issues around the boundaries of how we manage that, if we're closed as to how much pleasure we can receive, that is attached to money. It's an energy. Money creates pleasure. It's an exchange that we can receive and connect with. So all of that's interlinked. If we are resistant to receiving, that can show up in other areas of our life.
Yes. I'm just letting that sink in, because I think that is critical, actually. I think that's key. I think one of the biggest blocks to people being successful in business is not being prepared to receive everything. You have to be ready to receive stuff, don't you?
And lots of people aren't. Like, you come across people, they can't receive a compliment.
Yeah, or they can't receive a gift, or they can't receive love, or they want to have the money, but they don't want the tax bill. or they want all of the clients, but then they don't want the complaint. Well, at some point, somebody isn't going to, if you've got hundreds of thousands of clients, at some point somebody's not going to like it.
And what I find is a lot of those stories, and that, like, even the language in that shows up then, vice versa, in if they, challenging in relationships in business is often there with challenging relationships in a personal life. There's often a mirror.
I've got a feeling we could talk about this for ages. I think it's an absolutely fascinating subject, but we don't have ages to talk about it. So we'll go on to our little sort of quick fire round, which I've had some feedback recently that people actually find this really useful. So, but before I do that, Lorraine, how can people get hold of you?
So all my information is on my website, which is Orgasmic Life, one word, .me.
So,
loving all the ends of these websites, and you remember it was just .com.
Yeah.
.co.uk.
Yeah. There's thousands of them now. Some of them are regulated. So if there's something like .org, you have to be now a certain sort of type of organisation to be able to get one.
But I was just thinking the .me, that makes sense, because it's all about I love that.
It just opens it up. It just opens it up a lot more, doesn't it? So let's go on to the more sort of focused stuff for this week. So what have you learnt this week, Lorraine?
I've learnt that I am on a pivot in my business and it's going in the right direction, and I'm awesome.
Oh, that's good.
Super duper. What are you reading and listening to at the moment?
I'm not, because I'm writing my book.
Oh, okay.
So I'm busy creating one of those. So I'm not at the moment. I'm immersing myself in my little bubble of writing.
And your top tool, technique or productivity tip?
Sexual energy.
Well, of course.
Yeah, it'd be quite nice to be able to apply that sort of quite quickly. So say, can you apply that quickly? You can't really.
You can apply aspects of it. So communication, open some communication up.
Okay. What have you had a challenge this week? Have you had a particular challenge?
I had a challenge this week. Traffic's been quite a challenge this week, moving around doing different things. But other than that, but there's also an opportunity, traffic. I've done loads of work.
I tell you what, it is if you can let go of the, is this going to move any faster? Oh, I'm going to get there. If you can let go of the anger or the frustration around it, it is actually an opportunity to stop. Because you're like in limbo land, aren't you? Yeah. You're not in any particular place. It's like free time. It's like you've been given it for nothing. It's like it doesn't exist. It doesn't come out of your time life, does it? Yeah.
And you're also not in control. So,
yes. Yeah.
If you're stuck in traffic, you just have to.
Nothing's your fault. Have we got any more questions? I can't remember. I think
we've got what year? What's your top? Did you do top challenge this week, or was that just what
we've done that, the traffic. So normally at this point I'd say, what's your top tip for being in the business that you're in? But I'm not sure I can work out what business you I'm not sure I know what business you're in. Hopefully you do. So what's your top tip for your area of business?
I would say the top tip for running every business, you can have all these wonderful coaches, but it's trust your heart. Go with what feels right for you in your business, because that is what is going to resonate with you. It's what aligns to you. It's what will manifest your dreams. So any business owner, don't use your head so much and trust your heart.
Can I suggest something? Because off air we were talking about groups we've been to, or how people describe us, and I really love that you take ownership of how people see how you want to be viewed and how your business is viewed. I think we should all take a little bit of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so do I. I just want to... So I've got some other questions that I want to ask, but I just want to do this one because people do like this question. What do you know... Not the people I'm asking it of, everybody else likes it. What do you know now that you wish you'd have known when you started out?
That I can be the authentic me and do what I want to do in the world.
Okay, so... Now what I want to do, because we have actually got the time, is to go back and hear a little bit about your story, about where you came from and the decisions that you made to actually stop doing what you were doing and move forward.
As in before the business?
As in before,
Okay.
Before the business, what you were doing. And we don't have that long, but I think we have a little bit of time to hear some of that, because I think it's a really inspiring and interesting story, the way that you sort of got into doing what you're doing. So far away.
Thank you. So I lived pretty much a double life for about 20 years. I was a secondary school teacher, worked in FE, so really kind of formal education setting. But I also had a bit of a secret life. And in my secret life, I was into the swinging scene, into the BDSM and kink scene, and just having a whale of a time misbehaving, really. But these two kind of worlds collided as my career progressed. So did my interests and hobbies in my alternative lifestyle, to the point that it really made me quite ill. And I ended up with alopecia, irritable bowel, tonsillitis. My body was just crying like, you can't do this anymore. And most of that was my own story, my own fear, my own judgment, my upbringing, and all the stories I was telling myself about what was good and what was bad. And in 2016, I made a decision that I needed to make a decision and either focus on my career and stop my alternative life, or give up my career and do something else. So with an opportunity to move to assistant head teacher, I decided to give up my career, go on a journey with the tantric energy, mindfulness, energy healing, not particularly knowing that I was going to end up having a business called Orgasmic Life, but after my own tantra journey and my own healing of my own sexual energy, decided that's what I wanted to do.
So when you made the decision to leave we'll call it your career, had you got any, we'll call it qualifications, had you got any coaching qualifications, had you got any sort of skills that you could legally use and get insured for, in other words, to run a business?
Yeah, so I was a qualified teacher and trainer. I'd been in the NVQ world. My background was health and social care. I'd got qualifications in mental health and a degree in lifelong learning, and then went on the tantra journey, and alongside that built up other qualifications, including I've done some work around sex addiction. I've done some work in London with a company working on how to work with sex addicts and sex offenders. I work with abuse charities doing different qualifications and bits. So just over time, I've kind of added on to the qualifications. Somatic body work I've done, tantric practitioner, train the trainer, tantra teacher I've done, which is a bit of a mouthful. So like all of that's now in place now to move forward with the business.
So was any of that, I'm not going to get this wrong, I know I'm going to get this wrong, was there anything that you did along those lines? I suspect you already had them, that brought some, I don't know how to describe this, but you know, you're going into businesses effectively talking about sexual energy, which people see as woo-woo. What's the other word? Could be a bit taboo, all of that sort of thing. Was there any qualification, and I'm saying that in inverted commas, that you decided to take as a way of bringing some legitimacy to that? Or did you just go, actually, I was going to say a rude word here, I don't need that. What I'm doing is legitimate. Let's just go forward and see who bites. No,
because as I've gone through the journey doing the energy work and different things, it is legitimate. So I don't feel that I need something. And it doesn't kind of exist because it's energy. So to have something that's very, there's lots of things I could add to my practice, NLP, there's lots of, I could do psychosexual work, but actually what I've got is enough for the people that I want to serve. So it was
just about actually saying, I know this may not be what you've heard before. I know this may be a bit different, but actually I'm just owning that and either buy it or don't buy it.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of people who, they may not do what you do, but they do stuff that is not what business people are traditionally expecting. They want sales training, don't they, and marketing and how to use Facebook, and how to convert sales and how to overcome objections. I think that's what they expect to hear. They don't necessarily expect to hear what you're coming to do. And
it's not an area I particularly expected to go into.
Yeah.
The one-to-one tantric sessions, sacred sexuality sessions, or what I was running, but I've realised that there was a theme, and it was an important theme, and it was that actually we can prevent some of this. I don't have to be working with clients that are in a place of trauma, anxiety, depression, and at the end of the tether, actually I can go in and teach some of these skills, and actually the skills I'm teaching, empowering communication, empowering boundaries, empowering the same skill set.
It's life skills, isn't it?
Boardroom and bedroom.
Two beats.
I don't think I can add anything else to that. I think we need to end it on boardroom Boardroom and Bedroom. So Lorraine Crookes, of Sexual Empowerment Liberator and founder of Orgasmic Life, thank you so much for being such a fantastic guest. And we look forward to seeing you at the Women in Business Big Show and an awful lot more. I'm Sian Murphy, my co-host today, Jemma Fairclough Haynes, thank you so much. Also in the studio, I have to say, didn't get much of a say, was Amanda Amar from Conscious Living Coaches, also going to be at the Women in Business Big Show as a speaker. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you all very soon.
Tune in next week to the Women in Business radio show for more stories, ideas and inspiration to help you grow your business.